brakes.
All right guys, so we had an issue with the brakes where when we were pushing the brakes, the light wasn't coming on. So I did some research and I found out that the switch is located underneath the bus in our bus. So what I did is I went up underneath and I found the switch. I went ahead and pulled it off. I'm gonna show you what that looks like and how it works in a second. I decided to test it out to make sure it was working or not, or to see if it wasn't working. And then I did replacements after that, and I'll explain that further on. But I wanted to show you guys this brake switch and tell you how it worked. So this is the brake switch that comes in. The part number is listed here in case you are wanting to replace this. Search that part number in Google. It'll pull up eBay pages where people sell these. It is important to note that when you're buying these, a lot of people won't sell them with this line. So make sure you're buying one with this line, or you have to take this apart and install a new line yourself. That's very difficult. So I decided to opt out of that and to buy a new one with a line. It actually came with about a 2-foot line. So the way that these works, this is called a brake switch. And when your brakes are not being pressed, there's a plate that comes up against this and pushes this little plunger in right here. And when it's pushed in, it's like turning off your light switch. It cuts the power coming in and ends it where the switch or where the plunger is. When that's depressed, which is when you push your brakes, it depresses this plunger and allows the electricity to run up through here and back around and back out towards your brake lights. So what I had to do was pull this out and test it to see if power would run through it. And if it did run through it, then I knew that I had a line issue. If power did not run through this, then I knew it was this switch. Here is a typical switch that you'd find in your car. This one would be inside of your car behind your brake pedal. And the same concept applies. When you're not pushing the brakes, it's plunged in, cutting off the power. When you push your brakes, it allows that plunger to come out and complete the circuit. All right guys, so I'm gonna show you how I tested this on this switch that I have that's normal car. It's the same concept that I told you about earlier. So what I did is I took a wire and I just put it on this terminal. This is a 20 amp, doesn't really matter because we're just checking the lights. So what I did was I pulled a 20 from somewhere else and I put it in here. I remember where I pulled it from so that next time I can put it, or when I have to pull this back out, I can put it back in. And so that's running now power onto here. So the power is gonna run down this. I'm gonna connect it to one of my terminals on my switch. And then I have the brake line right here. I'm gonna connect onto the other terminal. And what's gonna happen is when this plunger is not being pressed, I'm gonna get a signal that runs through the power down through the switch, and the switch is gonna send the power down into the brakes. So our light should come on. So I should be able to attach this, set it down, and go look to see if the brake lights are on. If that is the case, then that means my switch is good. So I'm gonna test it with this switch that I know is good, and then I'm gonna test it with the bad switch to see if the switch is at fault or if the line is at fault, starting from the harness here. So once I check that out, I'll let you guys know and we'll move on. All right guys, so after I did that, I found that the switch is bad. We at least have a good line running from the box all the way to the brakes because they did turn on. So we have power. We just need to make sure that switch is good. So I went ahead and replaced the switch, and I'll show you that here. So this is the brake switch that is installed. It is the new brake switch. As you can see here, there are 2 bolts. These bolts are gonna hold it in place. It has a sliding hole so that you can adjust it forward and backwards as you need. This is the plate that is going to be pushing against the plunger. As you can see here, my brakes are not pressed. It is in this shape, and the pivot point is right here. So when you push the brakes, it's going to push that pivot point backwards, releasing the plunger and allowing the connection to flow down into the brakes. Before the connection goes down to the brakes, it goes through the hydraulic pump and runs the hydraulic pump once the plunger is depressed. So it's important to make sure that you're using the original connections when you are reconnecting this and not running it from your 12-volt box just back to your brake lines. You want to make sure that you're having power to that hydraulic pump. This is going to be my connection. I used a crimp tool to crimp down these connections together. I opted for that instead of the harness because my harness was starting to break apart. One thing you can note is that the lines going in and out, the red and the black, you don't necessarily have to connect them to a certain side. I chose to connect them to the side that they were originally connected to, but because it's a very simple circuit just coming through with a switch that just breaks the line, it doesn't really matter. The power is going to run the same whether you hook them on either side. I opted to do it the way that it was originally just to be safe. There are 3 lines on this switch. This switch has a red, a black, and a white. This white, I think, is going to be for cruise control or something on buses that have cruise control. Ours didn't have a connection for this white line, but we do have cruise control, so I'm not 100% on that one. We also have a black here and a red here. Red is going to be your power in, and black is going to be your power out. So when you're connecting, this is going to be the line that's going to run down to your brakes, and this is going to be the line that runs to your power box. On the switch that I ordered, it actually has 4 lines, and I'm not sure what the other 2 go to, but again, when I pulled this out, I realized that only 2 of these lines were actually run into the bus. So you could just disregard those other 2 if, and only if, your original line only had 2 connections. And you can see that because there will be a harness that attaches both of these together. I cut the harness off. It's in a triangular shape on mine. 2 of the prongs have cables that come out the other side, and 1 just has a stopper on the other side. So it only has 2 lines that run out. If you guys have any questions on how this works, or if you want any more direction on how I got my troubleshooting, let me know in the comments below and I'll do a follow-up video. I also have a couple other issues with the bus right now that we're working through. The first thing is we believe that the fuel pump has gone out, so we might have to replace that. We also had some valve cover bolts that had broken off inside the threads, so we need to replace those as well. So I will be doing a follow-up video on how to do those later on. Once I get to those, I'm going to kind of hold off on them for now. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to answer. If you guys want more of this kind of content where we're doing more troubleshooting engine-wise versus building on the bus, please comment down below and let us know. And every time we come across some kind of mechanical issue, we'll do a video on it so that everybody knows how to do it.